As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not originally from around here. In fact, I started work many more years ago than I care to remember back in the UK. And at the time, I joined Cadbury Typhoo, which was then the foods division of Cadbury Schweppes. And you know what? Back then, life was simple. You know what? It was so easy to market your brands. I mean, just some of the brands that I worked on, Typhoo Tea, for instance. Now, really, all you needed then, in the early 80s, was a minor celebrity from some TV show and some singing donkeys. And you could drive sales. It was fantastic, and I'm not going to play you the whole commercial because I don't want you, it's a lot for this hour of the morning. I don't want you cringing too much. But let's have a little snippet. Animals, they're always guaranteed to get some attention, but those singing donkeys, had a pretty marked effect on the British public. It doesn't seem like, that great a piece of creative, but I'll have you know that actually Premier Brands, which now owns Typhoo, if I remember correctly, is reusing snippets from this execution in ads that they're showing right now because they trigger memories from people from all those years ago. And at the time, it was actually pretty easy to see the impact that the U campaign had. This is a typical Millward Brown tracking chart, and you can see the GRPs down at the bottom, and you can see that there's this big bump up in the blue line, the claimed awareness that people have seen Typhoo advertised on television recently. And you don't really need to model that to understand that this campaign was having a pretty big impact on people's awareness. But of course, we did model it. And as you can see from the green line, the impact was that instead of producing 1 percentage point increase in awareness for every 100 GRPs, the U campaign was producing 7 percentage points per 100 GRPs. And guess what? Because life was simple then, we could also see that there was a consequent sales impact as well. So, being inquisitive folks, we wanted to actually know, well, what drives the sort of impact that the U campaign was having? And that's where we started to get in to look at how you could predict what people were going to pay attention to remember, and how it was going to link through to the brand. And we basically found that there was a pretty straightforward recipe for something that was going to be branded and impactful, that was going to leave a memory that people had seen the brand advertised recently. And that was enjoyment. If people enjoyed the commercial, it was going to be more memorable. Engagement, active engagement, something that was actually unique, interesting, and involving was much more likely to gain attention and be memorable than something that wasn't. But if you wanted something that was actually going to impact the brand in some way, there had to be some linkage through to the brand in people's mind. The associations had to be linked so that when people thought about the brand, the impression that you wanted to come to mind was there. So that's the history. Now, of course, we face a dramatically different context. Life is complex. I mean, if we just think about back in the early 80s, reach was cheap. You didn't need to buy that many GRPs to reach a lot of people. The internet was science fiction. What Gary just presented would have been, wow, that's fantastic. It's still fantastic today, but it would have been unbelievable then. Word of mouth was largely ignored. Video, apart from the odd movie theater ad, was on TV. And what you bought was what you got. Of course, today, reach is expensive. The internet promotes instant sharing. Word of mouth is now visible and therefore trendy. Video is everywhere. You know, it's on your computer, it's on your mobile phone, it's going to be in your magazines. And viral video has become the new free lunch. People are hoping to get bonus viewings simply because the consumer has become the new media channel. They're going to extend that expensive reach for you by suggesting that their friends, their relatives go and look at video online that's been created with the specific idea that it'll be passed around. Now, those Brits, of course, haven't changed, and nor has their creative approach. They are still sending us funky animals from the other side of the Atlantic. Back in 2007, it was the drumming Cadbury's gorilla, which not only helped to sell chocolate, by the way, it also sold, as I calculated, about 160,000 extra downloads of Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight. That's pretty good going. And when you get the mashups on YouTube, you know that you're becoming part of the popular culture. And that's really when you know that a brand is, or marketing is really having a strong role, when people are willing to interact with it and engage with it of their own accord. But one of the things we wanted to investigate was what really allows you to engage with people in that way. How can you actually take video, some of which you may actually have used on TV, and what are the characteristics that allow it to get shared and moved around? Now, I don't know whether you've seen this, but it was actually a paper that was written in the same year as the Cadbury gorilla was starring. It's Viral Marketing for the Real World by Duncan J. Watts, and you may recognize that name from his other work in the area of social media and connections, connectivity. And they basically, the paper says that viral viewing is simply a function of the number of seeds, in other words, how widely seeded a piece of marketing content is online, multiplied by the reproduction rate. Now, in their paper, they focused pretty much on that, if you like, media side of things, which you could simply say is actually the initial reach of a viral campaign. So, and they proved that the wider you seeded something, the more bonus views you would get, irrespective of that reproduction rate. Now, of course,